Welcome to Q1 Week 7, Day 3 of Because You Can, where we're making a soda can. As I said before, we are on Day 3 of our project. So Day 1 we modeled the can. We built the whole thing and modeled it out, made sure our smoothing groups look good. On Day 2 we UV'd the can, and we should have actually gone and created the UV checker material, and we then UV'd the can and then rendered out and saved the UV. Today we're going to create the material. So we got to set up the file, drag all the assets, modify the base images, delete layers, remove shading, and simplify the color. And then finally we'll check our work, and then we'll actually render out as a FBX today. So the goal here is that we're going to basically be pretty much finished by the end of today, which is exciting. You'll have a sweet looking can. That might sound weird. Anyway, let's move on. We're going to close this. All right, these are our assets that we have so far. We have can day 1 finished, that's the first day. Can day 2 finished. We have our label, which we will use today, our orthographic view, which we won't really need today, and our can top, which we'll need. We're also going to need the can UV. Now you should have saved this in the last video, but I'm going to go through that again just in case it wasn't clear. So today we are going to be using Photoshop, CS6. Although most of the tools that I'll use today are basic Photoshop things that you will probably understand anyway. So I'm going to minimize this, and we're back to our can. Now this is where you should have ended up at the end of the last video of day 2. So Q1 Week 7 day 2. This is where you should be basically done. We have an unwrap modifier on our can, and we can actually open up that UV editor in our unwrap modifier. And just in case, actually, if you open it up fresh, you need to click on the can first, go to your modifier tab, click on Unwrap UV, and click Open UV Editor, and you should see your UV right here. Alright, now this is our UV. I'm going to click Control A to see the whole thing. We make sure everything's inside the edges, there's no bleeding out over the edge, right? It's all set up. We've got nice squares for our modeling material. If you actually wanted to see the checker map, you can actually adjust it here and click map 2 and see the map. This isn't really helpful for our checker, but if we had another material on there like the Coke label itself, it might be useful to modify to that. So that's fine. Ultimately, we wanted to, at the end of the last video, we went to Tools, Render UVW Template. Right, and we went ahead and used 1024 by 1024. Remember, it's absolutely imperative that this thing is square. 1024 is kind of a big material. It's a high resolution. I'm pretty sure Marcus Phoenix from Gears of War was 1024 for his entire body. So it's kind of a lot for an actual little can, but whatever. We'll keep it like this for now. We're going to hit Render UVW Template, and it pops up back here, and we are going to save this. Oh, why are you disappearing? We're going to save this by clicking this little button up here, this disk, floppy disk. Click on that, and we're going to save it as can_UV. All right, so you can just type in can_UV, right, and it's going to say what format. We're going to pick a PNG, right, and then hit save. Now I'm overriding it because I'm showing you how to do it again. So yes. Now once again, the configuration should be 24-bit, which is 16.7 million, and make sure alpha channel is set. The default is usually 48-bit, and alpha channel is set. So basically, you should just be able to change it to 16.7 and be good. Click OK, and it's saved. So I can minimize this, and I close that, and I'll close this. Click outside. Alright, so nothing's changed, obviously. We just saved out our material. So I'm going to minimize this 3D Studio Max file, and I'm going to open up Photoshop, and I'm going to go into my assets folder that I've been building everything from. I'm going to grab my UV, and I'm going to just drag it into Photoshop. Okay, let go. The nice thing about doing this is it automatically sets up Photoshop to the right dimensions. So this whole file is going to be 1024, 1024 pixels by 1024 pixels. And that's important that it's set like that. It also creates a new layer for us. This is our layer panel, and it's important because our layer panel is set up with the top layer being the most visible. everything underneath being hidden under the top layer. Now we want our top layer to be our UV, which it is. So I'm going to double click on the name. Careful you don't double click over here, otherwise you'll get options. We don't want that. So double click on the name over here and call this can UV. Alright. Now we can't really see it. It's just hard to see. So what we want to do is we want to create a new layer. Okay, I'm going to create a new layer, and we do that by clicking this button down here. Alright. It's going to be start out called layer 1. I'm going to call it let's say color. Like, how about main basic color? Alright, now I'm going to take that layer and drag it underneath the UV, and I want to make sure this layer is highlighted. Not the not the UV layer, but the basic color layer. And now what I want to do is I want to throw down like a basic color so we can just see, help see our UV. Alright, and we should use the basic color we're going to use our images are going to be. So I know that my basic color should be red-ish, so I'm going to double click over here on these little swatches. If I, not double click, but single click. If I click on this white swatch, it gives me a color option, right? And you can adjust it using this pull down menu. I'm going to move it all the way down to the bottom to pick red, and I'm going to click and drag with my left mouse button into the corner so I get like a really bright red. Click OK. Now come up here. You may have a gradient tool here, but it's right below your eraser. If you click and hold, you can get your paint bucket tool. So let's grab that. Alright, and now I'm just going to make sure that this is the layer that's selected, and then I'm going to click anywhere in this square. When I do that, you can actually see my color. Well, you can see my UV, you can see the red. Okay, now over here in the layers tab, you can actually turn these on and off, or hide them by using the eyeball. So if I want to hide my UV, which I will want to hide it later, I can click there. Okay, so great. So now I've got my UV laid out. Alright, I've got my basic color. So now what I need to do is bring in my images. Now I have two images that I'm concerned about. Not concerned, but I need to bring in, which is my can label and my can top. So I'm going to click on this and drag it in, and then I'm going to maximize this. Now this material, I'm going to click and drag around, and I know that my the bottom of my can, the side of my can, is down here. Okay, so I'm going to place it where I think it should be and hit enter. Okay, now I want my UV to be on top of this so I can see where my UV lines will lay. So I can just grab this UV layer and drag it up. So now I can see where it is. Now the can label itself I can move around too, because I want the can label to stretch so it fills up the entire side of the can, which goes up to this part of the UV. So I'm going to come up here to the move tool. I could also hit the V key for move, I guess, I don't know. And I'm going to hold Alt and middle mouse roll up to zoom in a little bit. So Alt, middle mouse up to zoom in. Now I'm going to drag this middle section here up till it fits right like that. Now I could make it go up a little bit or not. I want it to go to roughly the edge there. Yeah, because that's where I want it to be. And that looks good. Okay. Now, you'll notice my basic color is not the same as my material. Oh wait, I have to hit enter to confirm that move. So I hit enter to confirm the move. My basic color is not this red, and I do want it to be the same red. So I'm going to click my little swatch, my color swatch. I'm going to notice when I take it outside, it automatically turns into an eyedropper. I'm going to click that right there, anywhere in my color. Click OK. I'm going to click on my basic color label or layer, and then I'm going to go to my paint bucket, and I'm going to click anywhere in my basic color layer. All right. Now that should give me a solid color all the way through, which is nice because that will give me exactly what I want. Yay! All right, cool. So I've got my layout set up pretty good for now. Now actually I can actually save this and start looking at it in 3D immediately. So I'm going to File, I'm going to Save As, I'm going to call this Can. Now we're actually making a diffuse map called DM, Can DM, and I'm going to save it in the Assets folder that I've been saving everything else in, and you'll have access to this too. Save. Okay, so I save that. I'm going to minimize this. Now I'm going to go into 3D Studio. Okay, here's my can right now. I render it just to show you what it looks like. Actually, I just hit the wrong button. Go down here to my fourth swatch, and I'm going to call it Can DM for Diffuse Map. Okay, enter. Now, just like we did with the checker map, I'm going to click right next to the diffuse, except this time I'm going to add a bitmap. Click OK. Now it's going to say, all right, where do you want your bitmap? Where is it? So I'm going to go to where I have it, which is in Classes, 3D, Can, Assets. And I can actually use the Photoshop file, which is super nice right now because I can constantly update it and see how it looks. All right, and we're going to go ahead and use the collapse layers. Okay, click OK. And I'm going to drag this over. Okay, now once again, we can't see anything right away because we need to go to Parent and then Activated Show Shaded Material in Viewport. Now you can see already that the object, like I see all these weird edges on it, and that is because over here I have my layer visible. If I turn that off and hit Control S, it'll automatically save it, and then as soon as I click in here, it'll update. Like that. I've got edge faces on up here, so click that, turn off edge faces. So now you can see it. So my entire can is red, which is not what I want, but it's kind of getting there. It already looks pretty good. If I would have done this earlier on an old file, it would just be a wreck. You wouldn't be able to see anything because we wouldn't have UV'd it. But since we UV'd it, we're starting to look pretty decent. Okay? Okay. Let's go back into our Photoshop file. Let's turn our UV layer back on so we can see what we're doing. Okay? I'm going to grab an asset. Actually, first, one of these is the top. Now I know that this one is the top because we built it earlier, and this is the bottom. Okay? So I'm going to get my assets open. I'm going to drag Can Top onto my Photoshop file, and it's going to just drop it in there. I'm going to place the file, and I'm going to move it around. All right. Now I'm going to try and find the center of the file. I'm going to zoom in a little bit using Alt and the middle mouse button. All right, and then I can resize this file. Now I want to resize it evenly. So I'm going to hold Shift so that when I resize it, it resizes evenly, and it's going to distort a little bit, and that's okay. I'm not super concerned about that. Once again, there we go. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find what I really want out of this is the pull tab. The rest of it, see how it's shiny? That's just going to look weird. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit Enter to place the file, and I can actually turn my UV off, hit Save, and instantly you can see that I've got a label. Now, see how it's shiny there? And even as we move around, the shine stays in the same place, which that kind of hurts our brain because we're used to seeing things that shine. The shine moves along with everything else. So we can't use something that has that sort of shininess to it and have it feel okay. Also, I think I need to move it up a little bit. Back into Photoshop. Can Top, move it, turn my UV back on. I'm going to move this up a little bit, like that. There. Okay, good. All right. So now I'm going to actually start modifying this a little bit. Okay, now we still have a problem over here, but we'll deal with that in a second. For now, I want to pick one of these colors and sort of go with it. Okay, I want to hide my UV for a second. I want to pick a color here and then sort of make the entire area the same color. It'll end up looking better, even though it may look weird for now. So I'm going to go to my paintbrush tool, which is over here. I'll click on that, and now with my paintbrush tool, I click Can Top so I have something to choose from. All right, I think I'm going to have to rasterize the layer, which you right click on Can Top, go to rasterize layer, and now we can actually paint on it and adjust it, stuff like that. So I'm going to pick one of the colors from my Can Top. All right, I can do that just by holding Alt, and then I get the eyedropper. So just holding Alt while using the paintbrush, I can pick a color. It's super, super valuable. I'm going to pick this color over here. All right. Now my brush is set to size 35, hardness 100. Okay, that way you sort of have an idea. Now I'm going to just start painting in a little bit all around. Now I don't want to paint over this portion here. Okay, and I also am going to use some of this color here as well. Okay, now you can see how different these two colors are, significantly different. We're going to sort of try and mix all of these colors together. Notice I'm not concerned about this edge at all. I'm just going to keep going around that, pick a different color. I'm just going to get a smattering of all these different colors. Okay, I want to make sure that I'm getting a mess. Look at all those, so many different colors. It's a little ridiculous. I'm just going to brush around. Now you can also click one spot and then hold shift and click another spot and it'll create a straight line. So for instance, we don't want to lose this part over here like that. Cool. And this, we're trying to keep some of this detail from the pop top like that. All right. Now I've kind of got a smattering of colors and that's fine. We're going to kind of come around like that. Once again, I'm not really a Photoshop sort of guy. So I'm not really Photoshop savvy. This is more just a rough estimation. All right. I'm also going to erase all the black. So we can click over here on the erasing tool, and then we'll have to resize it. I've got it way too big. And I'm going to just delete some of this black stuff. All right. Once again, I'm just sort of messily going through it right now because this is all its own layer. If I pull my UV back out, I can see. Now, one thing about UVs is we want to make sure that we're not staying inside the lines. We need to go outside the lines just a little bit. I'll go back to my paintbrush tool, which is B, if you want to click the B button. All right. So I want to make sure I'm staying outside of the lines. Okay? Staying outside of the lines so that we're good. And we don't want to cross over into this bottom area here. So we want to make sure we're sort of staying outside the lines but not crossing over into this area. All right, cool. Notice I've got a bunch of weird colors. Now, the reason I did that is because I feel like it's nice to have sort of different colors to mix and match together a little bit because I'm going to sort of blend and blur them. Over here, there's a tool called Smudge. All right, Smudge is great because what it allows you to do is sort of blend these colors together a little bit. And it gives you sort of a smearing effect that I find looks a little better when it comes to metal. All right, and once again, you can actually adjust your strength. So I've got my strength set to like 60 or 50 or something like that, give or take. And what that does is sort of just smooths out this around there. Now, as I said before, I'm not really much of a Photoshop guy. I've just picked up a little bit, just a little bit to get by. And I'm going to do that to sort of blur this around so it doesn't look quite so obvious. There. All right. Be careful not to get too close to the inside. So there. What that does is it makes it so it's not quite so obviously hard-edged. And now, once I've blurred it a bit, I'm going to go to the or smudged it a bit. I'm going to go to the blur tool and I'm going to blur some of these edges a little bit. Right. Once again, I'm sort of just scrubbing. I'm at 36 strength up here. You can tell I can maybe bump that up a little bit and go through here. If I get onto this bottom layer a little bit, we can go through and delete that later, so I'm not too worried. What I don't want is any sort of hard edge. I'm trying to make that look a little smoother and blur it in a little bit. Once again, if you're really excited about making a pop-top can, you want to make sure that it's going to be all the same color. And you'd want to build this out on your own, like actually 3D model the tab. But since we're sort of just playing with this, this is a good start. Okay, so now I've got my can top. It's awesome. All right, cool. What I want to do now, and you can sort of see it. Now let's go into 3D and see how it looks. This is how it did look. Save this. Save. My 3D. And now I think it looks a little better. All right. Once we add some shine, I mean, obviously it looks very flat, but like if you look at it from a decent distance, it looks okay. Looks all right. Now we need to get our bottom part. So I'm going to use the same sort of pieces over here, I'm actually use this exact same piece. I'm going to create a new, actually I'm going to right click and I'm going to duplicate the can top layer. I'm going to call it can bottom. Alright, okay. Now what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to use the clone stamp tool, which is over here. Alright, you might have to click and hold it. We want to clone stamp. Alright, I'm going to increase the brush size by pressing the curly bracket on the right side, the right curly bracket. I'm going to keep making it bigger and bigger, and then I'm going to turn on my UV. Alright, now my can top is actually what I want to be working in, so I'm going to hold Alt to select my target. I'm just going to target the center of this thing, and then I'm going to come over here and find roughly the center and click, and then I'm going to brush out. So I'm making a copy on the other side. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to actually delete, using on the can top layer, I'm going to hide my can bottom so I can see it delete. I'm going to delete the can top, or this side of the can top layer. Okay, so if I turn the can bottom back on, it's still there. Now I can go in here, hide my UV. What I want to do now is I want to use this sort of material here. I'm going to do some more clone stamping. Really, part of the reason I'm going to use the left curly brace to shrink my brush a bit. I kind of want you guys to get used to using this clone tool. So by using this clone stamp tool, I can click Alt. I'm going to click right in here somewhere, and then I'm just going to brush over this. Okay. Yep. And if I start getting more of that, that's fine. Once again, not too concerned about how it looks because I'm going to smudge it all together again. Alright, cool. Now that's ugly, but once again we're going to go into our smudge tool. Alright, smudge. And I'm just going to blend it all together. I can actually make my brush bigger by the right curly brace. Sort of just smear it together. I feel like a real painter. So artistic. Once again, just looking to get like a sort of a blotchy color that's okay. There, it's good enough. Alright, make sure my UV is looking good and I'm outside the lines. Alright, which I am. I'm going to shrink this using the left curly brace. I don't know why it dings at me like that. I'm going to use the clone stamp tool again. Hold Alt, click there, and then I'm just going to make sure I'm outside the lines here. I don't want to, oops. There we go. Alright, cool. Do a little bit over here, make sure I'm nice and outside the lines. Alright, so that's my basic UV. Let's go ahead and look at it. Looks okay. Maybe it could be a little bluer. You can probably make it look a little better, but for now it's fine. I think I'm going to smudge it a little more just because I see an edge over here. So that looks fine. Once again, like I said, I just want it to look, you know, sort of swirly in a way. You know, this may be a little swirly, too swirly, but whatever. Okay. Alright, so now my can UV is done. I'm going to save it. I think it's done. I'm going to go in here and look at it. The can looks pretty decent. It's got the part on the bottom. It's not very flashy. It doesn't really like shine like it should. So I think we're going to need to add some shininess to it. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change my glossiness in the material editor. Actually my specular level. You can see on here I'm getting more shine. That looks better. And like I said, specular level, let's do like 90, and then glossiness would be like, how's that look? 40, maybe a little 60? No, too high. Maybe more like 30. That looks better. Alright, cool. There we go. There's our can. Shines a little bit in the light. Looks pretty good. That's pretty good. Now, the problem with this is Photoshop files are huge. Alright, so saving this and using this is great just to check our work, but what we really need to do is export this out as a smaller file, like a PNG file, and that's what we're going to do now. The nice thing about PNG files is that you can see through them, and Unreal Engine 4 deals with them very well. So that's why we're going to basically use PNG files instead of JPEGs and stuff like that. So I want you to go to File. We're going to save, well actually let's save this. Save this now, save. Go to File, Save for Web. Okay. Now, save for web. The best part about this is it allows us to adjust our file size quickly. So I can jump to PNG 24. Right? It tells us how big our file is going to be, and it allows us to easily adjust our width and height. That's super important because for a can, or like a real can in a real engine, in a real game, a can is small, so we don't want to make it a huge file. Right? We're going to make it a smaller file. For today, let's go ahead and make this 512 by 512 and hit save. You'll see it shrunk down in the background, and I'm going to go to my assets file and call this can final underscore DM. Alright, I'm going to save this, and it automatically saves. Okay, I'm going to save this file. I think I already did, but just so you see it saved. So that's saved as well. So I'm done in here. Make sure if you render out with this on, you're going to get these stripes in your file. So let's just save it so you can see what it looks like. See, I've got those weird stripes all over it. That's actually baked into the material because I saved the file. So I don't want to do that. So let's open that back up. Hide this. Save it. Alright. So we save that out and close it. Cool, cool. There's my final DM. That's what I'm actually going to put on there. So I'm going to make another material right here. And go click on none. Add a bitmap. Alright, I'm going to use my can final DM. Click OK or open. Alright, now when I drag, this here is spec 90, glossiness 30. I'm going to do the same thing. I have to go up to the parent. Spec 90, glossiness 30. Okay, and I'm going to drag this over like that. Now I need to make sure show shaded is on. Now it's less detailed than this, right? But it still looks pretty good. Still looks alright. Now the shininess helps, even though it makes the top obviously not 3D. But that's basically it. We're in pretty good shape. We've got a good layout. The material tiles well. You can see it. Now all we need to do is save it. Now I like to render things out a couple different ways. Number one, we need to save this as an FBX. Okay, so we have the file we want, this material. This we should call this can final underscore DM. Right, cool. Great. Now we're going to we're going to save this as an FBX because if you save it as an FBX, the material will go with it. And that's going to be important so that I can grade it if you want to send it in to me. So we are going to export selected. Okay? And now notice it already sets up as an FBX. I'm going to go to my asset folder, which is there, can assets. Alright, it's an FBX file. We don't have any others, so I'm going to call it, like I said, can. If you're in my class, you're going to call it your period, whatever that is. So 5, period 5, underscore, last name. That's your last name, and then can. And it's going to be an FBX, and then I'll hit save. And it's going to give you a bunch of options. You're going to want to make sure you have smoothing group set, triangulate set, preserve edge orientation. We don't need animation because we're not going to put any in there. We don't have any of that. But we do have embed media. Embed media will make sure when you save it, you save your actual file to it. It'll save as part of the file and you want to separate that else. Axis conversion ZUp is fine, and then FBX file format is FBX 2013. So click OK, and it's saved. The next thing you need to do is render it out so it looks pretty and you can show your mom. Put it on the fridge. So hit E, hit render, make sure it's going to render out good. I'm going to rotate it a little bit this way and then that. If you swap this to local, you can actually have more control over how it looks. I'm going to zoom in using my middle mouse button, and then to get it just right, I'm going to zoom out like that, hit E again so I can rotate it a little bit so I can see the top. You want to see the top. Click the zoom tool down here, zoom in there, make sure it takes up, hit Shift F, shows you exactly where how big it's going to be. If you have, make sure you hit F10 to make sure your render settings are set up properly. I like HDTV video. We actually set this up in the first day's video, but this is good too. So click render. That should be good. So save this. We're going to save this in our file as can, let's call it final render. Actually, let's call it can final. No, let's call it, sorry. So 5, your period, last name, underscore, can, and we're going to say TN for thumbnail. And this is going to be a PNG file, because then I can save it and print it out and put it on the wall, and it will have a clear background. Click OK, and it's done. And we have finished. We're all done. We did it all. We saved the FBX, we rendered everything out, we're done. You made a can, and it looks fantastic. I'm going to go File, Save As. I'm going to call this Can Day 3. Finished. Save. Now, let's say you're done, all right, but you still got a bunch of days left. Well, don't stop here. No way. All right, we did day 2, day 3. Make it better. All right, an artist is never done. You just run out of time. So if you only have a little more time, maybe you try a different soda can asset. You can do Mountain Dew, Orange Fanta, or any. If you like cherries, which I absolutely don't, you can try some sort of cherry flavored garbage. If you want to do something a little more extensive, let's say you got a lot of time, try a different can. Maybe a trash can, a can of beans, or you could try and do modeling the pop top. That would make it look a lot better. Right now it's really flat. It doesn't look so great. But if you model that, just that pop top, you could make it look a lot better. Or you can add more detail to the diffuse map. So add scuff marks on the bottom, maybe make the metal part a little more shiny. So yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff you could continue to do if you've got the time. All right? So I hope you learned something this week. I hope you got a lot out of it. And I look forward to seeing your cans. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section. And thanks for watching.